Are we really having this conversation again? Yes, because what we just witnessed deserves serious attention. Losing a basketball game is one thing. Losses happen in professional sports. Teams have off nights, shots don't fall, and sometimes the opponent simply plays better. Fans can accept that. What is far more difficult to accept is what many viewed as a complete lack of accountability during the Indiana Fever's post-game press conference. Critics argue that instead of honestly addressing the team's shortcomings, head coach Stephanie White and center Aliyah Boston appear to deflect responsibility after a disappointing loss to the Golden State Valkyries. Despite having a talented roster led by Caitlin Clark, one of the league's most influential stars, the Fever were outplayed and out-executed in key moments. When questioned about the team's final offensive possessions, which were marked by confusion and poor execution, some expected White to acknowledge mistakes and accept responsibility for the outcome. Instead, detractors felt her response avoided addressing the team's own failures, fueling frustration among fans who wanted a more direct and honest assessment of what went wrong.
What did you like about those final two shots, both the one before the jump ball and then the one to try and tie it?
I thought they were both good looks. They're a really good defensive team. And when you get an opportunity to get some clean looks, it's important. I thought we got some good looks.
Stephanie White's post-game comments quickly became a point of criticism when she stated that she liked the looks her team generated late in the game. To many observers, that assessment seemed completely disconnected from what actually happened on the court. On a crucial possession before the jump ball, Caitlin Clark, facing heavy defensive pressure and an aggressive trap, managed to deliver a difficult pass inside to Aliyah Boston. What followed was far from the composed execution fans expected from a franchise cornerstone. Instead of making a strong move to the basket, Boston appeared hesitant and uncomfortable, spinning under pressure before throwing up a rushed shot that lacked both confidence and control. The possession broke down entirely, resulting in a low-quality scoring opportunity. For critics, White's characterization of that sequence as a good look reflected a refusal to acknowledge the team's offensive struggles and late-game execution problems. The controversy intensified when a reporter followed up with a tactical question regarding Golden State's second-half adjustments, specifically asking whether White had anticipated the extensive playing time given to the Valkyries' number 4. Many felt that the response to this question would provide further insight into the coaching decisions and preparation that contributed to the Fever's disappointing performance.
Question for Coach. Did you expect number 4 for the Valkyries to play as much as she did in that second half? You think it's good?
Yeah.
Look, she didn't know you didn't. No, you didn't. Aliyah Boston had the point on the paper to show who she was talking about. She don't even know who number 4 is. Stephanie White wasn't prepared for her.
The criticism intensified during the press conference when a reporter asked Stephanie White about a specific player on the Golden State Valkyries. According to critics, White initially appeared unsure about which player the reporter was referencing and had to rely on Aliyah Boston and the stat sheet for clarification. To those frustrated with the team's performance, the moment symbolized a broader concern about preparation and attention to detail. They argued that a head coach's responsibilities include studying opponents, understanding rotations, and anticipating adjustments, making any apparent uncertainty about a key contributor particularly troubling. Critics further contended that the Fever looked unprepared from the opening tip and struggled to respond to the Valkyries' game plan throughout the contest. Attention then shifted to Aliyah Boston's performance. Despite being one of Indiana's strongest interior players, Boston spent much of the first half operating away from the basket, limiting her physical impact on the game. Critics pointed to questionable fouls, inconsistent positioning, and a failure to fully exploit her size advantage as major factors in the team's struggles. When asked about the challenges presented by the Valkyries, some observers felt Boston's response focused more on external factors than on her own performance, adding to the perception that accountability was lacking throughout the organization following a disappointing defeat.
Yeah, I wasn't even able to get into a flow. I played the second half. I think it's super hard to try and figure out and understand how the refs are calling it. I think it's super hard to get charge fouls when I don't think anyone's in legal position. Shout out to the Valks. They did a great job selling it, and the refs bought it, to be honest, so good for them.
Critics of the Indiana Fever pointed to Aliyah Boston's post-game comments as another example of what they viewed as a lack of accountability following the loss. When discussing her foul trouble, Boston suggested that it was difficult to understand how the game was being officiated, while also crediting the Golden State Valkyries for successfully drawing calls. However, detractors argued that foul trouble has been a recurring issue throughout her career and cannot simply be attributed to officiating. They contend that many of her fouls stem from fundamental basketball mistakes, such as failing to establish deep post position early, attacking after the defense is already set, and initiating excessive contact that leads to offensive fouls. From this perspective, blaming opponents for selling calls or suggesting that referees were misled avoids addressing areas of her own game that need improvement. Critics further argue that this tendency to focus on external factors reflects a broader culture within the team, one that begins with leadership. In their view, players often mirror the attitudes and habits established by their coaching staff. As a result, many felt that the contrast between Indiana head coach Stephanie White and Golden State Valkyries coach Natalie Nakase was evident throughout the game, believing that Nakase's preparation, adjustments, and game management played a significant role in her team's success.
When are you going to talk about your coaching? When are you going to talk about you not having your team ready in practice? When are you going to talk about anything that you did wrong? Natalie Nakase coached circles around you, Stephanie White. When are you going to address it? Your team looked ill-prepared. We look unprepared damn near every game. This was ridiculous.
Critics of Stephanie White argue that one of the most frustrating aspects of the Fever's loss was what they perceived as a lack of self-reflection regarding her own coaching performance. They contend that while players and external factors were discussed extensively after the game, there was little acknowledgement of the team's tactical shortcomings or the coaching staff's role in the defeat. Supporters of this view point to the Golden State Valkyries' ability to make effective in-game adjustments, noting that head coach Natalie Nakase appeared to identify Indiana's weaknesses and exploit them throughout the contest. In contrast, they believe the Fever struggled to respond once momentum shifted, allowing the game to slip away without making the necessary adjustments. The criticism reached its peak during a later portion of the press conference when White was asked a straightforward basketball question about how opposing teams are defending Caitlin Clark this season compared to last year. Many viewed the question as an opportunity to discuss Clark's impact on the game, the defensive attention she attracts, and the strategic challenges that come with building an offense around a player of her caliber. As anticipation built around White's response, critics believed her answer would reveal even more about her understanding of how to maximize the talents of one of the league's most influential young stars.
Here, where Caitlin Clark had a tough shooting game, are there any similarities to how they guarded her last year to this year? Is there any different wrinkles that have changed?
I mean, I don't know. I think she.
What do you mean you don't know? They ask, is it similarities in how they guarded her last year to this year? This is the head coach. She said, I don't know.
The most intense criticism of Stephanie White centered on her response to a question about how opposing teams are defending Caitlin Clark compared to last season. According to critics, White's answer, I don't know, was both surprising and alarming given the importance of the topic. They argue that understanding defensive schemes directed at Clark is one of the most critical responsibilities of the Fever coaching staff, since Clark serves as the focal point of the team's offense and is one of the league's most closely guarded players. From this perspective, any uncertainty about the adjustments opponents are making raises concerns about preparation, game planning, and player development. Critics contend that a head coach should be able to clearly identify defensive trends, explain how teams are attempting to limit a star player's effectiveness, and outline the adjustments needed to counter those strategies. As a result, some viewed White's response as evidence that the Fever are struggling to fully maximize Clark's talents and place her in the best possible position to succeed, fueling broader questions about the team's direction and coaching leadership.
To free her up. Nothing. You put her out there on the island. The girl gets blitzed and trapped all game. You created nothing for Caitlin Clark. You created nothing for Caitlin Clark. They're asking you about the similarities and how they're guarding her. You're saying you don't know. Maybe that's why you have no idea on how to free her up. You don't know. You don't know nothing. You never know anything. I don't know. Oh yeah, I don't know.
The criticism reached its strongest point with accusations that Stephanie White failed to make the necessary adjustments to help Caitlin Clark throughout the game. Critics argued that Clark was under relentless defensive pressure, facing full court attention, aggressive traps, and constant double teams. Yet Indiana's coaching staff did little to ease that burden. They questioned why more creative offensive actions were not used to create space for Clark, such as additional screening sets, off-ball movement, or tactical adjustments designed to punish defensive overcommitment. From their perspective, Clark was left to battle multiple defenders without sufficient support from the team's game plan. At the same time, critics believe the Fever failed to make effective defensive adjustments against the Golden State Valkyries, particularly against Veronica Burton, who was allowed to operate comfortably for much of the night. They pointed to moments when increased defensive pressure appeared successful, only to see those strategies abandoned rather than expanded upon. As a result, many frustrated observers viewed the loss not as an isolated bad game but as evidence of deeper concerns involving preparation, in-game adjustments, leadership, and accountability. These critics argue that the organization must take a hard look at its direction if it hopes to maximize the talents of Caitlin Clark, who many regard as one of the most impactful offensive players in the sport. The discussion ultimately reflects a broader debate among fans about coaching decisions, player accountability, and the future of the Indiana Fever as they attempt to build a contender around their young star.